Welcome, everyone. Lee Henson Hasty here at Theological Education and Seminary Relations with Leading Theologically. I'm here with my friend, and we're both here in Louisville. We should have probably come together. Why don't we do that? He's over there. It's not that far.
Beautiful walk across the Big Four Bridge. Absolutely.
Andrew Pomerville, who's president of Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary, which is, by the way, my alma mater, and been here for almost
about 8 months. I started in July. Yeah, so I'm still under that year.
We're coming around to that year mark. So
yes, indeed.
Super glad to have you here on the show. We're going to be talking about seminary lessons from undergraduate administration. Whatever else comes up, you who joining us, we'd love to hear from you, where you're from, what you're thinking, what more you'd like to know. This show is really about highlighting and learning and getting to know leaders who do work and think theologically, not just politically, not just economically. All those are part of it, but with God at the center. And my friend Andrew is one of those folks. He's in his office there. You even have books, like actual books.
I mean, it's barely. I've got mostly pictures of my kids and my wife and things from all of our adventures all over the world, all around me. It's great.
Nice. Well, thanks again for being here, right here in the wind down. We're in the Holy Week, and we're moving toward graduation. There's a lot of things going on. Andrew is an alum of Alma College, where he served before coming to Louisville Seminary, also Princeton and Pittsburgh Theological Seminaries. He did a program at the University of Aberdeen. He's a lifelong learner, I think. You're still learning, right? Michigan
Absolutely.
State. Are you a Spartan? You're more of a Scotty than a Spartan, I'm just guessing.
Absolutely. I lived across the street from MSU and did a lot of work with MSU at my church in East Lansing. So yeah, I do bleed green and white, but don't tell my U of M grandmother.
Oh, but they just heard it. It's online.
There you go. Yes.
He is a father. He is a spouse. He's a biker. He's a social media maven. You watch out. You can follow him and
I love this.
Just glad so many other things. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking on the leadership role at Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary.
Amen.
Really grateful for you. As you know, we usually start this show with a question about your call and your vocation. And so one from Anna Maria Sassi Diaz. She asked, what are you hearing, learning from your community and context, Andrew?
Yeah, that's great, Lee. And thanks again for having me. And I'm just I'm delighted. Your show's fantastic. It's been
Thank you.
It's been a joy to watch the other folks who've been coming on too. And I feel honored. Hearing and learning from the community context, it's a changing one for me, but it's fun thinking of the call that's ever evolving. My daughter is almost 18 and will be heading off into college this fall. She's heading over to Scotland for 4 years at University of St. Andrews University. And my son is almost 16. He's a sophomore in high school. And I only say that because I'm now seeing the world through the eyes of an almost partially empty nester, and seeing the world also through that generation that my daughter and my son really are part of. It's been interesting to think of where I was at that time, what I understood about the church, what I understood about my sense of call and movement and that. And now thinking about where I am, certainly in this different position that I've been in for less than a year, and what it means that we're coming out of a pandemic, that we're wondering about theological education, about higher education, some of the challenges we face out there that I've been playing out amongst this generation of students, but now it's become so very personal as I was approaching my kids in particular. Denali, my daughter, Bryce, my son, thinking about what they're thinking has helped me to adjust my own pondering and discernment.
Well, what I'm hearing you say, people, others have said, like, this is not my grandfather's seminary. This is not my mother's seminary. This is not necessarily my cousin's seminary, right? I mean, things are changing so fast.
Indeed. Yeah. And I've been using this the same kind of line, at least when I go out and talk to churches and folks who are thinking and wondering, what is the seminary doing? Those who know about Louisville Seminary, or those who are just discovering it. It used to be that you might ask a clergy person, where did you go to seminary? And it was obvious because, at least in our own Presbyterian tradition, there was, of course, that assumption that if someone's up front, they're preaching, if they're leading, that they did go to seminary. And then it sort of shifted. It was did you go to seminary? Because then we start to see people who maybe are leading in different ways,
Right.
and church looks different. And then that changed somewhere over the last 20, 25 years to why did you go to
Right.
seminary?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of anti-intellectualism. There's a wonder about what they're teaching you in the seminaries. But now I find the generation that hits me as what is a seminary? It's an entire generation of folks who I'm not trying to recruit them to come to seminary. I'm almost doing the groundwork of trying to teach them. Here's what a seminary education is. Here's the types of things you experience. Now I can try to recruit. The foundational assumptions just aren't there anymore.
Right. Well, and that's important. I mean, you just described you're looking at this through your children's eyes, and it's not even about you. It's about, and I think theological schools are always helping us and have look around the corner, and it's there's different questions they're asking. You just posed that different ideas, different views. I'm also on this precipice. I think a recently 18-year-old daughter who's headed to college, and we learned. I'm not sure who. Trying to remember. I'm going to have to get the credit from this. My wife will remember who gave us this. But we're trying to migrate from empty nesters to bird launchers. we have prepared these birds to fly, and they may not fly well at the beginning, but they're going to get there. This is what they're prepared to do, and I've been thinking like good higher education, good theological education. It's not so different. So it's really interesting for you to use that as your part of your context. Like you're trying to launch people into a whole new world, and it's not just landing in a pulpit, right, or behind a communion table.
That's just it. I think, and you all have talked about this here before too, but the notion that church, even congregation, whatever definitions we use for them, are not universally understood, accepted, or are universal. They're just not things that we can assume any longer. And so when someone comes to seminary, even thinking about what it is they're trying to discern, I have in my head what I think they should be asking or what they might be considering. And it turns out I'm off base on some of them. I haven't thought about what experiences they've already had growing up in a different type of environment. And that's not just generational. I think there's something to be said about that for some of our non-traditional learners, second career folks, third career folks. It's just we're asking questions these days, and I'm not sure we're thinking or looking at the world through the same lens as our students who are arriving. And so the questions need to be adjusted.
Well, hopefully you're keeping some of those lenses, clear, before they get too clouded. I mean, 8 months in, but you just come from a college context where you had you had hundreds of eyes, Alma College, I guess, that you were seeing this through, and that's an interesting sort of preparation and context for you to come into theological education. And what are some things you learned, or lessons all of us can learn in theological education and leadership generally from that kind of undergraduate administrative experience you have?
Absolutely. And I think for any of us who are coming to a seminary presidency these days, or any type of leadership role in theological education, there's no one path. And I'm finding that, especially in our Presbyterian system, looking at my colleagues, there's a lot of new presidents.
I think it's five.
And they're all wonderful, loving these folks. It's been amazing to work with them. But we all have a very different trajectory to get to where we are, which necessarily means we're bringing some different experiences. Mine comes from serving in the church and the parish setting. And then I ended up back at my alma mater serving as a chaplain, and then eventually AVP for community engagement. That wasn't what I went to seminary to do, but I certainly learned some things there. And now being in the seminary setting, I certainly see what's analogous. And I think the easiest one that a lot of us sadly point out, the enrollment cliff of undergraduate institutions, especially those liberal arts schools, but it's across the board, is something that we in the seminary world and in the Association of Theological Schools, we certainly are facing as well. But we also have the same, I won't say enrollment cliff, we certainly have the same membership and identity challenges that are happening in the church setting. Now you put that in theological education, you're throwing both of those together, and there's a lot of anxiety and panic about what we have to do. And What I saw in the undergraduate setting at times, not just Alma, and I love that school, but a lot of schools that were very short-sighted. It was a desire to fix it right now. How do we make sure this next class is going to back up to where we're supposed to be?
Right.
And so you look for what's working at other places, or you think of adding new programs, you work twice as hard, you hire more admissions people, all of those things. And I'm seeing the same stuff happen in the seminary world, but what we're noticing in undergraduate is that that's not always the answer. Not understanding your institution's own saga and foundational truths, you'll sometimes grasp at the things that you probably shouldn't have been. If you're a liberal arts school, I don't know if this particular master's program is what you need to be adding. Maybe you needed to think over here. Likewise with seminaries, just because there's another type of graduate degree that another seminary did that seemed to grow, doesn't mean it's going to work at Louisville Seminary, or that that's even our call.
Right. Well, and I've talked about this, and others have known, and the standards for Association of Theological Schools, have changed significantly and give a lot of freedom along those lines. Before I continue on that thought, let me just say, anybody here, we'd love to know you're there, your context, what you're thinking about, what you're working on. So feel free and please do engage in the chat. But I want to say is, like, even some of the online and hybrid approaches to theological education, there's not one way to do that, right? Residential, the types of programs that are there. But I love what you're saying. I see what you're talking about is a long view, not just that short view. It's not the quick fixes. It's staying honest to your mission, I'm going to guess, but for the long haul.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thinking about I'll just use Alma as my most recent context and example. Alma was founded at a particular time in a particular place by a particular group of Presbyterians, of people who said that in this part of Michigan, we want to try to provide an education that's going to train. Back then it was pastors, doctors, teachers that they thought they were going to be, to provide for that community.
Right.
Now that's about 150 years ago or thereabouts. And do they have the same mission? Because at this point, you can get an education in other places, in Michigan and otherwise.
Right.
So are you training for that, or are you training for something else? And then when you think about the online component of it, regionalism changes entirely when we start to imagine what are we supposed to be. I think for seminaries, that's similar too, at least I'll just stick with our PCUSA context. We are scattered across the country regionally. Right. On purpose. You can feel where they were founded and the year that they were founded and the place and time and what they were trying to answer. Well, when you make it certainly accessible, and when you change what that means for your target students, I think you have to start asking yourself why you're doing what you're doing. It's and those are hard questions, but joyful if you have a mission that you believe in and feel called to by the Spirit.
It feels, I do have a little special place in my heart for Louisville Seminary, and it feels like these are questions LPTS and its leaders have asked in different ways in different seasons. I mean, it was the seminary that was both in the northern and the southern streams.
Right.
It's been a bridge builder that way. Field education was a real sort of moniker before that was kind of a gold standard. At LPTS, the counseling, marriage and family therapy program, which really fits. And when I think about drawing a map around the 100, maybe 200 or 300 miles, you probably know this better than me. I mean, if you get to Chicago, McCormick may be the closest, but that's a whole nother thing, right?
Absolutely.
There are other theological schools in the region, clearly, but, there's a big swath up north and south. And I realize now also with some of these hybrid approaches, your students it's not just, geography on the ground,
What does that embodiment mean? I think as we think about are the church we're going into, because I'll even remember during my DMin work with Pittsburgh and Aberdeen, and I was talking to folks in the North American and UK context. And I'm going to go back to, I think, 2013. I remember a robust conversation about church online. And again, 2013, people were still playing in that sphere, but it definitely wasn't the norm. And what I was hearing
There's a lot of suspicion. A lot of suspicion.
so much, because I remember asking, can you have real congregational vitality online? Could it be a purely online congregation? And even the literature at the time was kind of saying, oh, no, you need embodiment at some point. It's a good supplement. But we've watched over the last few years, people who claim it, they're saying, no, this is my experience of the body of Christ. I'm not trying to get too much dangerous territory, but even talking about sacramentology, what does that mean?
Right.
And before that, I couldn't even engage in the conversation with folks who wanted to talk about it. Now, lots of people are talking about it, and we're worried, or we're excited, or we're whatever. And the seminaries should be a place where those conversations are happening.
Well, I just mentioned the Marriage and Family Therapy program. I'm also thinking something unique to Louisville is the Louisville Institute, which is a lifeline for so many. What are some things going on at Louisville Seminary that maybe people don't assume they know? That would be, and maybe some things that are on the horizon.
Absolutely. Yeah. The Marriage and Family Therapy program, it's been going on for 30 plus years. It's not a new thing for us, but watching it in this new age of how do we talk about mental health? How do we talk about support that's obvious and in new ways is incredible. The things the students are doing in our counseling center for our neighbors and what they're learning in the midst of all of that is it's inspiring. It's something that I wish I would have done in seminary. I'm glad to see that now as an option to do.
It's a service to the community too. I mean, in a huge way. Yeah.
And I think it can be church. There's something to be said about folks who are serving in a different way. How does this look like the church in the world? And then the other one for me is our Black Church Studies program, which is phenomenal. Just incredible to hear the way we talk about how we recognize the realities of some systematic racism in our past and denominations, certainly in our country as a whole, but wondering what does this mean for churches that were founded, again, at particular times and for a particular reason. I'm impressed, especially with our faculty and our scholars around here who have been really diving into the rural African-American church experience, which is a unique kind of a niche within Black church studies, but one that needs to be explored. There's so many folks out there in these small churches who are looking to be for the resources and for questions about what comes next for their congregations and how they answer commercial gentrification that's pushing them out as cities grow larger. What does the imagination look like for a church that had it was founded by formerly enslaved people? It has a firm tradition in that area. What does that mean now for the generations later? I'm excited about all of that, but also just seeing what we're doing and answering questions. It's fun, like my colleagues at the other seminaries. We should not assume we know what churches need these days. It is great to go into the world and ask the churches, our neighbors, the non-church folks, what is it you hope a seminary trained person will know, will think about, will be able to help with? And stuff is just very different from what I expected. To bring it back to the undergrad, it was the same thing. Knowing that our students are coming with different expectations made for fun conversations. So yeah, I'm being spoiled right now, Lee. This is the most fun I've ever had in a position.
That's awesome. Well, I see you post like hosting students at your dinner table. You're listening to what they have to say, and that's a beautiful thing. It really is. Another thing folks may not know about, but I think they should, and I think it's coming up soon. I was trying to find is the Grawemeyer Awards.
Grawemeyer, absolutely.
Charles Halton being honored for his book, A Human-Shaped God, Theology, Embodied God. Is that you probably have a copy.
I should have put it. I think it's in my nightstand. No, amazing. And that connection is incredible. And, link that to the Louisville Institute, since you brought that up. Louisville Institute as well helps scholars and authors put together things that they otherwise wouldn't have the resources to direct towards. We see some amazing people coming out of the Louisville Institute through that Lilly Endowment funded program. That's just, it really is it's a jewel here at Louisville Seminary. We are very blessed to have that opportunity. And Grawemeyer is a nice one to show off. Charles' work is just amazing. If you haven't read that one yet, The Human-Shaped God, just a different way of thinking about embodiment and thinking about the diversity of the human experience and what that says about God is got me. I gave it to my kids even, and I'm hoping they haven't picked it up quite yet, but I'm excited for them to read it before Grawemeyer hits in a couple of weeks.
Well, so there's a lecture. There's other Grawemeyer Awards with Louisville Seminary, but with University of Louisville, but this one done by the seminary. I think not enough people know about it. It's been done since 1990.
That's
and,
right. That's
I
right.
know as a student, it was transformative for me to be able to see and meet some of these scholars and their writing and cutting edge work. I remember being in the chapel listening to Elizabeth Johnson, She Who Is, and it was packed. I mean, literally, the fire marshal better not have shown up because there were nuns in the aisles. Literally, I mean,
That's great.
I mean, those are the kind of people they're bringing in, and encourage people. And you can register for those and listen to that stuff online too, even if you can't make it to the 502, as we say.
I'd encourage you to take a look at Louisville Seminary's website and see ways to join into those. But those are amazing lectures coming from people who they're thinking theologically. Their challenge is certainly to see our world in a different way. I appreciate that we have this opportunity in a partnership with the University of Louisville, and the author receives an award that is
substantial.
It is. I don't know how else to say it. That's incredible, especially in the world of theological education and theological writing. The Graumeyer really is it's the creme
probably the top prize out there.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And we have some really good things going on here. It's been fun to but I'm only 7.5 months in, so I'm still learning. I'm just figuring out where restaurants are and how to get across campus for some of these.
Right. And I remember being this, and there's not in Louisville, there are not many straight roads. This is not Chicago.
I'm coming from Michigan. We got T's everywhere we go and a grid system. But no, that's the other one to say. I know it's maybe a little off of the theological, but this is a joyful place to be. And there is something about Louisville itself coming after Breonna Taylor's murder, and the sense of activism and cry for justice in this community. It certainly began before 2020, but we've seen most recently, it is a community poised and ready to demonstrate to the rest of our country and to our world what it means to wrestle with our past, to recognize injustice, and to do something about it. I'm honored to be a part of a place like this. It is it's inspiring.
There's so much potential. I'm thinking with the newest HBCU, Simmons College, right here in town. There's a lot going on in Louisville. Everybody thinks Derby and bourbon. There's more than that to it. I promise.
Those are good too.
And there are great restaurants. Folks, we're so glad you're joining us here with Andrew. Please let us know you're here in the comments. If there's questions you have, you'd like to enter in the conversation. We have just a few more minutes together. I want to get those in and follow up with this. Go to the website. I say pastors and scholars, look at the Louisville Institute, because there are grants available, people, and projects and cohorts, and that's always changing. And there's a lot of ways to get engaged and learn. So get to know, and thanks for bringing those eyes from sort of that undergraduate. What is this next generation? What do we call them? I'm not really sure.
I mean, we're at the end of Z, so whatever comes after that, they're still trying to identify it, and that's
Alpha maybe is next. I don't know.
I'm a firm Gen Xer. I know that, but I'm born right in the cusp between millennial and Gen X. But it is part of my identity, and I understand the way I saw the world based off of what my parents experienced and how I was raised. I'm curious of what will our children think coming into the undergraduate and to the seminary level because of what they lived through. Those who were born during the recession, basically, and now they've experienced trying times, certainly politically, and they have watched this pandemic come, and they're wondering about taking care of the world. My daughter's going to school for environmental sustainability. That was not a major when I was an undergrad.
Right.
And I think you talk about what we can learn from one another, looking at what those students are studying in undergrad and wondering how do we merge some of that with our theological questions.
Right.
Do we have that same lens that we're able to use to talk about how we steward creation, how we wonder about choices we make and how they impact others? It's I'm learning a lot from my kids, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, there's a leadership lesson right there. Get to know some people younger than you in your world, and you'll learn something. I have that occasion all the time in my life, and it's really true. They're asking, and it's true, they're asking a different set of questions. So I appreciate you kind of nurturing that and seeing that. Yeah, and folks out there, you're thinking about seminary. It's not just what it used to be. I
Right.
think he's making that clear. And there are possibilities across the country. There's different get to know all the schools. I think we're partial to the Presbyterian ones, but there's a lot of potential. Which, speaking of, I'd love for you, we're going to wrap up here pretty soon, to give us a benediction, a charge, other final words. We're working on our next guest. I think it's going to be in early May. Is Jonathan Walton is going to be with us at the seminary, and then later in May, Jacqueline Lapsley, I think May 22nd. So we got those shows coming up. Really, prayers for everyone during this Holy Week, particularly you pastors out there. I know this is a heavy season for everybody, and the musicians. I know there's all these expectations about music and Easter sermons. So take a deep breath and just know that you're not alone. We see you and we appreciate you. But any other final comments?
Yeah, two parts about that. I will say, so I'm a bagpiper, Lee.
That's right. That's right. I meant to say that.
So this becomes bagpipe season from Easter through Memorial Day in particular, and everything else we got. But yeah, thank you for mentioning that to those musicians. That's I come from a long line of musicians in church. No, right. I'm glad to hear those other two guests. It's unique to be in a field where the folks who are running institutions that might be considered competition for you are dear, beloved colleagues. We are, I think, in the seminary system, we're not in competition with one another. We are all trying to support God's vision of theological education in this world and find as many ways to do that. That is something I am so thankful for Jonathan, for Jack. She's incredible. But for all of our partners out there, and to know that, please, we talk to one another, we pray for one another, and that is something I didn't always see in undergraduate either. That we were scrambling for students. Well, these days, having a mission in a seminary system and a divinity school, knowing what we're trying to do, that's a different type of a scramble for students. I am happy to send a student over to Union because that might be the best place for them, in the same way that Jack would be happy to send someone over to Louisville if they think they're going to match up better here. And that's something I didn't expect, but I am so glad to discover. And the other side of that, too, thanking everybody for their support of our schools, but also I'm going to steal one final line that came a colleague over at ATS. Number one reason people say they go to seminary is because someone tapped them on the shoulder.
Amen.
And that's actual data to show. It's not because of a good website. It's not necessarily the programs that we have. It's because someone looked at you and said, have you considered this? And so to any of your listeners out there, if you're looking at someone and thinking, gosh, they might have talents for some type of ministry that could benefit from theological education, tell them that. I don't care if they are 8 years old, 80 years old, or somewhere in between. Encourage them. God uses all of us at different times, and we certainly have the resources in the seminaries to help support that. And,
that's beautiful. Before you give the benediction, I got to say that's a lesson too. I think sometimes congregations think they're in competition with other congregations, but we're in this together in the body of Christ. And how can we? And maybe one church is better for somebody than another. It's not like scrambling for members, but I think that's really important. And I will add, in my own particular call story, I think I probably said it more than once on this show, is Dr. Tom Mullis. I was serving in campus ministry, didn't really know what I was doing in Radford, Virginia. Going back to preach their 150th anniversary, I'm really excited about in April. But Tom Mullis, literally, I was going to law school, and we had our last meeting, kind of committee meeting, and we're walking out of the church. Some people have been here, and there was a doorway and a threshold, and he stopped in front of me. I was turning off the lights. He turned around, and he was 6 foot something, taller than me, and wider. I mean, big. I mean, he could have played pro football, I think. So, I stopped. I did not keep going. And he looked me in the eye, and he literally put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, Andrew, don't go to law school, go to seminary. Literally, it was that clear. I mean, there were other things telling me, but I finally said, okay. I finally said, okay, I'll do it. I'll go 1 year. So that's amazing. I mean, those things that you're talking about, and if anybody's listening today or hears this, whenever you listen to it, and you see somebody who has gifts for ministry or
Yeah.
public leadership, or it's not just one thing, really, yeah, and you have any influence, don't tap them on the shoulder, turn around and look them in the eye, whatever it takes to get that done. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Oh, I love it. And I'm just going to not try to throw us another story, but to say that coming from Alma, just this last couple of months, 3 of my former undergraduate students were ordained. Now, I didn't get to walk with them in seminary. They had me when they were 18 to 21,
Yeah.
22. But seeing that now, there are a few moments in ministry that are more joyful than watching that that continuation. Yeah, I am so pleased to see the Spirit working in their lives, and I'm glad someone did that for me as well.
Amen. Amen. Well, bless us as we go, if you would.
Absolutely. And I will say, I see in a comment there, a mutual friend of ours, Raymond Bonwell. Raymond, it's always good to see your written words and hear your voice. So thank you for being there with us.
Exactly.
As a blessing in this middle of the Holy Week experience, I would say, understand we are all still on a journey. While Christ is with us continuously, there are moments when we notice that presence more obviously, and other times we shut our eyes so tightly. Let us listen for the others who are walking with us, that Christ is also working on, and hear their voice calling us to open our eyes, open our hearts, open our ears, and may we go towards the resurrection with the same hope and the same joy, the same enthusiasm that comes from understanding the grace and reconciliation that comes through Jesus Christ. Blessings to you, Lee, and to all of the folks out there. My goodness, this was fun.
Thank you. Hallelujah. I'll go ahead and say a little hallelujah a little early. Thank you for that. Hopefully the liturgical police won't turn me in. Blessings, everyone. We'll see you soon. Take good care.